Hello, welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Caw, and as always, I'm delighted to be joined by the one and only Keith Jackson. Keith, how's it going?
I'm okay, Dan. I'm getting fatigued, mate. This is old. I'm too old for this late night business, but I don't know. That was so much for Rangers to be encouraged about from that game of football tonight.
Aye.
And yet, as I'm sure we'll speak about, Daniel, there were bits in it where, you wonder, was it a bit of an opportunity lost there? Could that have been 4 or 5 tonight? They were far superior to Plzen in every department, and I don't really see it being a harum-scarum second leg. I think Rangers will progress quite comfortably, but there's always that thing in the back of your head. If the Czechs were to score an early goal, how does that affect things? Do they get their tails up? Is it a momentum shifter? And will Rangers regret the fact that they could have comfortably, had they really gone for it tonight, had they been a bit more relentless in the second stage of the second half, there was more goals for them there tonight. But do you know what? I said before the game, Daniel, 2 things were massively important for Russell Martin tonight. 1 was a performance, and 2 was the result. Now, that sounds really obvious, and it is really obvious. But off the back of Motherwell, having made the changes that he made tonight, which I suspected that Nico Raskin might be one of them, said that last night, I think. So having made those decisions, said what he said, and got the result and performance that he got at Motherwell, he needed something to reconnect a little bit with the supporters, who I thought were a little bit standoffish tonight, as if, like, okay, let's see what you serve up. But as the goals started flying in, the contribution from the 2 wide boys, Ant-Man and Gassama, I think that engaged the fans. I think they can see the potential. And also, this was the first time since Russell Martin, took over, and bear in mind, this is only, his 4th game. First time that he's not put out a team which was largely made up of square pegs and round holes. That was players playing in the proper position tonight, and I thought Rangers looked all the better balanced for it. Interesting to see what happens with Raskin moving forward, because I think Lyle Cameron came in and had a really, really strong game for Rangers tonight. Thought it was really impressive. So on the whole, and I'm sure we'll go through it more in detail, but on the whole, there's a lot for one, Russell Martin to be delighted about, and I'm pleased for him, because I think he really needed it. But 2, for the team and for the supporters, who can look at that and if they were getting a little bit worried, I think there was probably just enough there tonight to think, right, okay, they can show a little bit of faith in Russell Martin's methods, because there was plenty more to be pleased about than unhappy about for the Rangers supporters tonight, I think.
We've got plenty of comments already, Keith, but if you're watching at home and you want to get involved in the conversation, please do so. Let me run through a few of these to get us started. Luke Skywalker says, forget Spider-Man being the star in Glasgow right now. We have our own hero, Ant-Man. I would throw the Gasman in there as well. 4 goals in 4 games now for Gassama too. Val says, evening guys, great game, no doubt, no problem. Fantastic response after the ear bashing at the weekend. Scooter Nation says, levels above Saturday. Fantastic performance from James in the wing and middle of the park. Way more control. Now do it again or better come this weekend. And a lot of people, Keith, generally pay. Well, this one from Tommy says, just like watching Brazil. I don't know if I go quite that far, but a lot of people talking about Ant-Man. And just that he was a breath of fresh air to this Rangers team tonight.
Well, I mean, they've been crying out, haven't they? I know that Czerny did a great job for Rangers last season, but there was an imbalance to what they were doing going forward, because if it wasn't Czerny, it wasn't coming from any other areas of the pitch. But you look at that now, you've got Ant-Man on one side, Gassama on the other, constant threat. I mean, they are rapid, the pair of them. The actual raw, explosive pace is going to cause trouble against any defence, because that's what they hate. A guy running at them at full tilt, and these boys are, as I said, they're rapid. And for that gives them a better balance. There's no doubt about that. And from a Rangers perspective, another positive, they've got Mikey Moore to come into that. where will he feature? We've got Fellow Asgard, different type of player, but an attacking threat. So you can start to see the kind of strings going onto the bow here a little bit in terms of what Russell Martin is trying to design and what it's meant to look like in the final third. I think to cut him a bit of slack over the first 3 games, it's going to be really difficult. You can put down your foundations for how you want the game to be played, how you want your team to set up. But if you've got Kieran Dowell on the right-hand side, and I feel like everybody's taking a sledgehammer to him,
yeah.
But he's not a winger. He's not going to get past somebody. He didn't have any pace. He was naturally coming inside all the time. But you've got boys there now, right and left, that can go outside a man, they can come inside, they can join up, and they can run with the ball at serious pace. And that unsettles any defence. And also, I think, in terms of when Rangers were trying to come out and play over the halfway line, John Suter, we've mentioned it, trying to fizz balls into Danilo wasn't quite working. There's far more options because there's far more movement, far more energy on either side of the attack there tonight. And I think, that augurs well. I think there's still teething problems. I think they're a long way from being anywhere near perfect. But certainly with those additions in the wider areas, extra spark and energy and drive, they look far better. They look far more comfortable and balanced tonight, and threatening. They carried the threat.
Val agrees with your sentiment about the square pegs and square holes. She says, first time in a long time we've had 2 good wingers playing in the right position.
So Czerney was there last season, but they had nothing much coming down the left-hand side. But if you've got 2 guys and they're different players, but they're similar in that. As I said, the raw pace, but also it seems to me from what we've seen of Ant-Man there tonight, really, really good close control of football. And Gassama, we've seen that. You saw that at the opening goal tonight. That was a terrific feat to work the sort of link up with Dessers to get on the move. And that's the thing. That's what we're talking about. If you've got guys that are willing to run and run in behind, Gassama makes that pass. Dessers executes it beautifully, but Gassama's movement dictated to Dessers where the ball had to go, and it was a lovely little layoff from Dessers. But it's because you've got these guys on the front foot, on the move. As soon as they've played the ball, they're looking to get on to the next one, and that will transform what Rangers look like in the final third. I think at times tonight, and I think Russell Martin, in fairness, said after the game, he wasn't very happy about the kind of last 15, 20 minutes. I think he felt the energy dropped. I think he felt the ambition to get a 4th goal kind of faded out of it. And clearly, if he's not happy about that, you'll tell him, because I think one of the things that Rangers have to try and keep is a level of intensity. Because I think there are moments in these games just now where you're seeing it when they start knocking the ball across the back 4 and inviting a bit of pressure on. And I know it's about trying to play through presses, but if it's slow and it becomes a bit turgid, it gets easier to pounce on if you're the opposition, if you're not moving the ball quick enough. And I think that's another thing, work in progress. Rangers will hope that gets a bit better, because when you've got the sort of options that I think they'll have now in the wider areas, there should always be a ball on. There should always be a pass there for somebody. And I think there's been moments in the first few games where they've come out from defence and there's not been an obvious pass there. But that should improve with the options that they've now got right and left.
Luke's getting really excited. Says Ant-Man might just make Maeda look like a Marvel extra come the 31st of August. Simply red, white and blue. He says Ant-Man, Gasman and Igaman would be box office. I think though, Keith, we need to pay a bit of tribute to Dessers. You mentioned him there, and without meaning any harm to Danilo, I thought he was so much better than Danilo tonight. A massive upgrade.
Again, a different player. Danilo, I'm not entirely sure what his main kind of strengths are. Danilo as a striker, I think he's probably more of a poacher, an opportunist, a penalty box guy. There's no doubt in terms of link-up play, and that's interesting because your number 9, if you've got 2 flying machines left and right, your number 9 becomes a real important player. in terms of if you can get the ball into his feet, what can he do with it? Can he hold it up? Can he bring them in? Can he lay it off to the side? And you saw that from Dessers tonight. It was far more accomplished, and it gave Rangers a sort of platform high up in the opposition half to build through, and that could be interesting. You know, Dessers has had to cop a bit of flack for his penalty box finishing, missing chances. He's been carrying a lot of weight on his shoulders as the main guy. But if he's there as a foil or a foundation to bring the wider guys into the attacking third and into the attacking positions, that could work, because we've seen he's a powerful big guy. He can hold off defenders, and he's actually pretty clever with the ball at his feet.
BB in the comments says, don't know if anything has been said tonight. Once again, Djeidi was good at the back, and I thought that was a good excuse to not only mention him, but obviously Max Aarons started at right back tonight. What did you make of his performance replacing Tavernier?
Well, there you get one positive and one negative. Djeidi looks, I think Rangers have won a bit of watch there in terms of, you know, he's clearly loves defending. He's rapid over the ground. He's strong, looks solid in the air, and can distribute the ball really cleverly out from the back. And you saw him kind of coming into midfield and linking up with Rothwell and these guys. So he's got a pass on him, and you know, and I think that's going to be essential in terms of what Russell Martin's trying to do, breaking through presses and lines and all this. If you've got a centre half that's quite comfortable joining up in midfield, as we saw him do a few times tonight, albeit let's not get carried away about the standard of opposition.
Yeah,
that was a very poor Plzen side as far as I could see, and yet what were they? They've been champions in their own country 6 times in the last 14 years. So I think they were missing obviously a couple of their better players. One of them's signed for Lyon today for $7.5 million. Very good player. So maybe they were a little bit undercooked. But in terms of this tie, Rangers are in a real strong position. Now, to get back to Djeidi, I really like the look of him. He had one tremendous block in the first half after Rangers played themselves or overplayed themselves into a bit of bother. And he's got that ability, that speed to get back in if they are caught. He can cover the ground and get back in. And you saw that again at Motherwell at the weekend, which impresses me. So, yeah, I think that's a real positive, Djeidi. I think he had the partnership he's forming with Suter. Looks good. I thought Suter was really strong defensively again tonight. And the pair of them look pretty decent together.
Yeah.
Max Aarons is a different story at this moment in time. That was obviously him playing in his more natural position tonight. But I don't know if he looked all that more comfortable on the right than he did previously on the left. And I'd love to see what the stats say. But with my naked eye over these 4 games, I think he must have passed about 70% of his passes are going back the way. And a lot of them are putting players in difficult positions. When there's an easier ball, if you've got the confidence to look forward, and if you lose the ball 20 yards further up the pitch, it's not a crisis situation. Some of the passes that he's playing back the way without opening up and looking for runners or looking for options further up the pitch, he's playing it what he might think is safe. I wonder if this is what Russell Martin's talking about when he talked about self-preservation. He might think it's a safe ball, but it's actually a ball that's putting the guy in a bit of trouble. And if he gets picked off because you've gone back the way and even closer to your own goal, then that's when accidents happen.
Yeah.
I think Max Aarons might even just be a little bit surprised by the size of the football club, because I think a lot of guys come up from England and think it's, you know, a relative backwater, it's going to be easy. I think he's realised it's not going to be easy, far from it. And I wonder, and I'd be interested to see the reaction of the guys out there, the Rangers supporters. You know, were they happier with Max Aarons in that position, or would they have preferred Tavernier?
Well, David, right away,
I felt when Tavernier came onto the pitch, he was better able to get forward into that inverted sort of fullback position, link up, and he's always looking to get forward on the front foot.
Yeah,
it just depends what Rangers fancy. I know there was a clamour for Tavernier to be taken out of the team. He was, but I'm I'm not sure at this minute in time that I've seen enough from Max Aarons to be convinced that he's an upgrade in Tavernier.
Well, David Ross, you can see there in the comments, says that Aaron's pass led to the third goal. Says he's top class, he will come good. Michael Monroe simply says, Max.
It was a good pass. It was a good pass.
It was a good pass.
Mm-hmm.
And as Keith says, if you want to let us know who you'd rather at right back, Rangers fans, Tavernier or Max Aarons for the weekend, let us know. If you were Russell Martin, Keith, who would you start at right back against Dundee at the weekend?
Tavernier. For a couple of reasons. One, as I said, I'm not convinced at this minute in time. Max Aarons might come onto a game. I think he's struggling a little bit with it just now. But secondly, most importantly, you talk about Rangers, Russell Martin trying to make a possession team. Rangers are going to have a lot of the ball against Dundee, you would imagine, at home. And Tavernier is a guy that I think shows more signs of getting forward and creating something, contributing further up the pitch. Although, granted, I think Max Aarons as a player, he just looks a little bit, not overwhelmed by it, maybe a little bit taken aback by it. But he might just need to take a bit of time to find his feet in the team. And he hasn't played a lot of football over the last 12 months or so. So that's probably got to be factored into it as well. He can certainly offer up some serious competition for that right back slot, but I think he would need to improve before you felt that he was necessarily going to be an upgrade on James Tavernier, who I know often comes in for criticism. I know that he's seen as the poster boy for years of underachievement at Rangers, and I get all that, but I wonder if he could just, if he looks to me as if he'll still add more going forward for Rangers, and I think that's what Russell Martin requires, especially in games like at home against Dundee.
As you can see there, Under a Glass Metropolis says, when Tava's on form, he's brilliant. When he takes a huff, he's a pollution to the team. Val says, I think Tav coming off the bench when the opposing team's a bit leggy works. Scott says Tav's okay at Ibrox against lesser Scottish teams. David agrees with you, says, I agree, Max is a bit negative. Loudrup simply says, Aaron's all day. And Billy says, the third goal was perfect from back to front and exactly what Russell Martin is all about.
Fair enough.
Michael Monroe also asks, where is Sterling? That was something we talked about in the hotline the other day. He's out kind of long term, isn't he?
I got an update on him the other day. I think that he's expected to be back ready to play by October, which is, I think, slightly better news than originally anticipated. And I think he is a player that Russell Martin would enjoy working with because he's got the energy to get about the pitch. I think he could make a contribution in a number of positions. And we've seen, in terms of he could be a central defensive option as well for Rangers. So, yeah, I think they'll be happy to get him back sooner rather than later. Interesting what he does now with Raskin, though, isn't it?
Just what I was going to ask you.
I mean, I said to you after the kind of Russell Martin's machine gunning of his dressing room after Motherwell, I wondered if Raskin was perhaps one of the players he was referring to when he talked about dropping your ego. I have to say that was an enormous decision from Russell Martin to leave Raskin out of that midfield tonight. And I think you've got to congratulate the manager for making the decision, but also Lyle Cameron for his contribution in the middle of the pitch. I thought he was terrific. Yeah. Covered every blade. In fact, it didn't seem to me as if he was as tied down to that sort of left-sided role as Raskin has been. He was able to get about the pitch more. There's one point he turns up at almost right wing in the second half, tracking the ball into the box.
No, he was everywhere.
So you wonder if there's a miscommunication or if somebody's not kind of quite understanding what Russell Martin's trying to implement. Maybe that was part of the problem with Raskin. I don't know. What I would say is that in terms of what they've got in their midfield area, Raskin continues to be, for me, the leading light in there. I think he's a real talent. And I think, and again, maybe credit to Russell Martin, I think when he came off the bench tonight, he looked, really in the mood to get on the ball, to dictate and to show people, look, I can play in this system and I can play in Joe Rothwell's position as well. Mm-hmm. So that'll be interesting. Raskin at his best is a really big player for Rangers. So that was a big, brave decision by Russell Martin. Clearly, something's not been quite right between the pair. But when Raskin came onto the pitch, he didn't look in a mood. The rattle wasn't out the pram. He was determined to play his part, even if it was from the bench. And I thought he looked really sharp when he came on the pitch, actually.
You can see there in the comments, Blair Mulgrew says Lyle Cameron was so efficient. He was brilliant. Blue Nose John says Lyle will be our new Scott Arfield. But a couple of people, Keith, asking, what does Keith think of the crazy, stupid booking for Raskin? And Tommy concurs, says Raskin's booking today was outrageous. I don't even know. I mean,
I don't know what it was for.
They were saying on the commentary that it was dissent, and then apparently they thought it was maybe for interfering with someone taking a throw in. The clip I saw, he didn't do either.
He patted the guy on the shoulder. I've never seen that become a booking in my life, and I have no idea why that resulted in a yellow card. Not at all.
Me neither. Blair also makes the prediction that it'll be Raskin and Rothwell will be both pivots, the two number 6s against Celtic. Scott says Raskin is a different type of 6 than Rothwell. Rothwell's not yet fully fit. It does we've talked a lot about Raskin, Keith, over the last couple of months. He's obviously, he's now into the second last year of his deal. I know you'd said maybe about him hanging on for another year, doing well potentially in a World Cup for Belgium. But he seems in a kind of uncertain spot now.
It's a difficult one. And if there is a problem between Raskin and Russell Martin, then it might be a little bit trickier than originally anticipated to stick a contract in front of him and get to extend, even if you're prepared to give him a significant pay bump. Mm-hmm. Because if he doesn't feel happy or wanted or trusted as part of Russell Martin's kind of key group of leaders, he may well feel that now might be the best time to look at something else. I think from a Rangers perspective, they need as much quality as they can get their hands on, and Raskin's quality for me. So I would still be trying to sit him down, put a contract offer in front of him. As I said earlier, previously, if that's got a release clause, which is triggered at a certain price in a year's time or 18 months or whenever that may be, then he's got the comfort of knowing if that number is matched and he wants to move on, he can go. But I feel at this point it would be a mistake to rush him off the premises. And I would hope from Russell Martin's point of view that the two of them, if there is an issue there, that they can resolve it, because I think Russell Martin would benefit from having Nico Raskin as part of his options in midfield and a central part of that.
And Blue Nose John says, he hints that are the club holding on to Raskin until after the qualifiers. I mean, it's a good point. If they are contemplating potentially selling a big player, surely you hold on to him, for the next couple of ties.
Yeah, probably. And there's probably more than Nico Raskin that comes into that category, if indeed that's where he is just now. Mm-hmm. You've got Egerman, you've got Dessers, you've got unanswered questions around these players. Egerman, the suspicion would always be, is this a tools down job from him?
Feels a wee bit like that, doesn't it, from the outside?
Well, I because you've spent so long doing this job, you kind of see red flags sometimes where there aren't any. And I remember thinking when Egerman had an issue with his paperwork to come back to the country after the summer holidays and he was late coming back, that's usually the first sign of a red flag. And now he's not fit to go to his work. I don't know. It could well be there's a bit of agitating going on behind the scenes there. But I'm speculating on that. However, we do know there are 3 or 4, 5 maybe clubs that are really interested in him. But you're right, if you're from a Rangers perspective, unless you've got a striker ready to come in and take up a place either on the bench or in the starting 11 for these European ties, I don't think you can contemplate it. And it might well be that these issues have to remain unresolved until much later on into this month, before the end of the window. Michael
also says, Yilmaz, is he going? Has he disappeared? I've read the story in the last couple of days on Record Sport Online that he's very close to joining Besiktas. his previous club in Turkey. So, I mean, I think from what I've read, that will be done and dusted quite soon.
I think the hint was when he got his number taken off.
That was the biggest hint,
when he got the shirt torn off his back to give it to Max Aarons, I think he probably realised that this wasn't going to work out for him in the long haul. But again, that's an odd one because he's had obviously issues with his fitness, Ridvan Yilmaz, and I think Rangers overpaid for him when they signed him. But he's not that bad. He's not a bad left back. No. He can contribute, and he would probably look more comfortable playing in that position than Max Aarons did in the first 3 games of the season. So
I agree with that.
But Russell Martin clearly is his own man. He's very kind of strong ideas and principles and how he wants his team to look. And maybe he just took one look at Ridvan Yilmaz and thought it just wasn't going to work for him. Mm-hmm. Clearly, that seems to be the case.
And just before we round up, Keith, James Tony says in the comments, if we get through this tie, we'll be guaranteed at least a £5 million parachute payment, but we're not ready for the Champions League. And Billy chimes in and says, I agree, the Champions League money is great, but I think we do well sticking to the Europa League this year and building for next year. It's a kind of, the reason why I bring this up is because it's a kind of peculiar point for Rangers to be at, because I think one tonight, you could forgive fans for looking, going, look, there's only one more tie and we're in the Champions League. But it seems there's a lot of fans that are like, listen, we're not ready for the Champions League.
I wrote a piece about it for online today, Dan, saying exactly this. It's a strange one. I just said to Rangers fans, press pause before you go into this game tonight and try to give a definitive answer on what it is that you're looking for out of this, because you're actually getting dangerously close to the Champions League here. And for Russell Martin, that might be a little bit like Icarus flying too close to the sun right now. I said in my piece, potentially the Champions League could be a career ender for him. And you don't need to take my word for it. Go and ask Giovanni Van Bronckhorst.
I was going to say that probably was, that did spell the end for Van Bronckhorst, didn't it? The Liverpool games and Napoli and stuff.
His players couldn't recover from it. And I remember Walter Smith always saying, Daniel, to me years ago about, he says, Champions League's great because it's great for financials and it's great for the club and it's great to be rubbing shoulders against teams at that level. Fantastic. He says, but over the course of his time in charge, over all these Champions League campaigns, he felt that Rangers never really got started domestically until getting up towards December time and into the new year. And he said he felt there was a sort of hangover from playing in the Champions League because some of his players were almost starting to get a little bit of an inferiority complex. They thought they were really good players until they went and played the Champions League and it knocked them into their shell for a while. And it would only be, once you got out the road, they were fine and they get back into their domestic duties and they realised that they were good players. And their self-confidence started to come back to them. So I think there was a big element. Not only was it reputationally bad for Van Bronckhorst because they were getting 6 successive defeats, including a 7-1 thrashing from Liverpool at Ibrox. And reputationally for the manager, these are difficult to recover from. But also if your players, if the knock-on effect is impacting upon their form and their confidence, it becomes like a vicious circle, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Where you're struggling to find a way out of it. And eventually that did for Van Bronckhorst, that with the injuries, because of the amount of football that they were playing. And first and foremost, I guess, with Van Bronckhorst, because the board didn't back him financially, having taken Rangers to a Europa League final. I mean, that's the thing. He takes them to a Europa League final. I know we're repeating history here, but takes them to a Europa League final in May and he's sacked by November. And no one can tell me that the Champions League campaign wasn't a massive part in that, on every level, whether it was denting his credibility with the supporters or with the board, whether it was denting the confidence of the players, really robbing them of any sort of momentum. And on top of that, he lost his key performers that were sold off and not adequately replaced. So, the answer to the question is, Daniel, if I'm Andrew Kavanagh right now, and this is where it becomes complicated, Because Andrew Kavanagh might be looking at it going, well, if we can get access to that and unlock that sort of funds, 50, 60, whatever it is, £1 million, UEFA's cash, that can help expedite what he's trying to do in terms of, well, they've got more money, the more funds available, they can accelerate their ambitions for Rangers. And that is all mad. I mean, that's, of course, that's a no-brainer in terms of a business plan, a business model. But from a football perspective, does Russell Martin really want to be taking this team that is finding its feet under him, that still has a lot of improving to do, and probably isn't ready or equipped to survive at that level in the Champions League, albeit the new expanded league phase makes it slightly less daunting than it was. But, you know, as I said in the piece, if he's unable to trust these players to get out of Motherwell in one piece at the weekend, what's it going to be like if he has to take them to Madrid, Munich or Milan? And that would be a scary thought, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's got quite a strong response from a lot of our listeners, Keith, our viewers rather. Gary says, you would think Celtic going into the Champions League to do special things. You say Rangers aren't ready, then Celtic aren't ready either. Green Machine says Champions League's best chance you see world-class teams. Blue Nose John points out we can't let Celtic get further ahead financially. Billy says it's a hard one. We have more chance of progressing further in the Europa League. I'd love the Champions League, but we are rebuilding yet again. Gary says take the money and go as far as possible. Wouldn't mind Europa though. More chance of winning it. No chance of winning the Champions League.
That's 100%. 100%. And by the way, it'd be a big push for Rangers to win the Europa League. But they have shown on a couple of occasions, once they get a bit of momentum, they're quite comfortable on a Thursday night.
Aye.
But it is, I think it's a real... I don't know what the answer to the question is, by the way. I think that Russell Martin might give you a different answer from Andrew Kavanagh. I think your fans, a lot of them will agree or disagree or, you know, come up with their own theory and what's the best. But I'm not sure what the answer is. I'm not sure it's a black and white. I think it's nuanced. I can see obvious reasons for wanting to progress into the Champions League, but I can see one or two obvious reasons for thinking Europa League might be a safer environment for 12 months or so while Rangers are trying to grow. Yeah,
it's an interesting one. But I think for tonight, Keith, that brings us to the end of our late night special Hotline Live. Thank you so much for all the comments. We really appreciate it as ever. If you want to get involved in the conversation, we'll be back to do it all again at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Keith, sleep well.
I will. I'm going to have nightmares because I was thinking about trying to get back into the office and back into the studio for tomorrow night, but I've kind of reached the conclusion the only way, literally the only way of getting about Glasgow city centre right now is if you can fire webs out your wrist. So
that is pretty mad, eh?
Might be stuck doing it again remotely, but we'll gauge that tomorrow.
Either way, we will endeavour to be here at 6 p.m. tomorrow to get involved in the conversation all over again. Keith, it's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Dan. Good night, mate.
Thanks for watching at home. Cheers.